You've been lied to. From the moment you opened your eyes to this world, you've been conditioned, programmed to believe that your cravings define you, that your urges are your identity, that if you feel desire, it must mean something deep about who you are. But let's get real. That idea didn't come from you. It was planted, gently, repeatedly, until it felt like truth. And now, it controls you, without your permission. That quiet voice in your head, pushing you to chase pleasure, chase attention, chase validation. It's not yours, but you've accepted it anyway. Like a man in chains who's convinced himself he's free just because the cell is made of glass. The real trap? They made you believe that if you're not constantly pursuing pleasure, you're missing out. That if women aren't constantly drawn to you, you're not valuable. They turn sexual validation into your scoreboard. And a man who lives for validation is the easiest man to control. Here's why. When your attention is glued to impressing others, you lose yourself. You stop building your soul, your depth, your mission. You start building a persona, and then you become forgettable. But what if you didn't suppress desire? What if you redirected it? This isn't about denial. This is about transformation. The goal is not to kill your appetite. It's to master it. You don't silence your mind. You train it. You forge it into a weapon. When you stop letting desire drive you and start letting it fuel you, that's when everything shifts. See, a desexualized mind isn't a dead mind. It's a sharp one. It sees desire, it respects it, but it doesn't serve it. It doesn't get dragged around by impulse. It takes that wild energy and sharpens it into purpose. Think of a man who walks into a room and doesn't crave approval, doesn't follow the flow, doesn't seek attention. What happens? People take notice. You don't know if you should be intimidated or impressed, but you know he's got power. That's because his will hasn't been hijacked. Now, ask yourself, how many times have you let your need to be liked dictate your choices? How many times did you shape your life around the hope of being chosen, desired, admired? You gave up your energy, your time, your truth for scraps of validation. And the worst part, you did it with a smile. You believed it was freedom. But here's what true freedom looks like. A mind that burns with intention, but doesn't burn out chasing cheap highs. A mind that observes temptation and says, I see you, but I don't need you. That's when you win, not by turning off your desires, but by putting them on a leash. You become the king, not the servant, the architect, not the addict. Let's go even deeper. Imagine a man who spent his whole life working on his appearance, perfecting his style, maxing out credit cards, just to turn heads. And for a fleeting moment, he gets that attention. He feels like he won, but it vanishes, just like that. Because what he got was never real. It wasn't rooted. It wasn't earned through truth. That cycle, that's not self-love. That's addiction wearing a nice suit. Now, let me ask you the hardest question of all. If no one found you desirable starting tomorrow, would you still believe you're enough? If your answer is no, then your self-worth is on shaky ground, and you're sinking, fast. But you can stop it, right now. You can start pulling yourself out of this mental trap by separating your identity from your validation, by detaching your self-worth from other people's reactions. You've got to return to your center, reclaim it, restart from there. Of course, it's not going to be easy. You're going to feel like part of you is dying. And in a way, it is. That needy, conditioned part of you. The one that got programmed when you were too young to fight back. But that's the man who's got to go. Because a real man doesn't conquer others first. He conquers himself. And to conquer yourself, you need one thing more than anything else. A free mind. Not a mind that flinches at every emotion. Not a mind that needs constant affirmation. But a mind that chooses. That acts deliberately, not reactively. That's the rarest kind of power. That's why the men who lead, the men who invent, the men who leave a mark, they all have something in common. Their minds aren't hijacked by lust. They've reclaimed their focus. It's not that they don't feel desire. They just don't worship it. They transmute it. They alchemize it. They use the fire that once distracted them to build something greater. That's the secret most will never tell you. Your sexual energy is fuel. Freud said it. Jung knew it. Every ancient discipline taught it. If you don't waste it, you can channel it. And when you do, your mind becomes sharper, your decisions stronger, your presence more intense. You stop reacting, you start building. But how do you do that? You start with awareness. Every time you feel the urge to impress someone, pause. Ask yourself, why? Every time you feel the itch to be validated, breathe. Observe it. Don't judge it. Just see it. Because that space between your urge and your reaction, that's where power lives. Most people run from silence. They drown it out with dopamine and distractions. But silence isn't your enemy. It's your mirror. It shows you what's really going on inside. The desexualized mind is powerful because it doesn't need. And when you don't need, you don't chase. And when you don't chase, you don't get used. That's when you become truly free. Do you know what it feels like to walk down the street without trying to get anyone's attention? It's like walking through noise, but not being touched by it. You move in silence. And silence makes people nervous. Because it reflects. It shows them what they're not. And that's why people will attack you when you start to break free. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something different. You become a reminder of what they haven't done. They'll call you cold, emotionless, detached, just because you're in control. But don't let it shake you. That's part of the journey. Because when you stop playing the validation game, you stop making others comfortable. You become the one thing they don't understand. Sovereign. And yes, that road gets lonely. It's not loud, it's not celebrated, but it is solid. It's rooted. It doesn't sway every time the world changes its mind. That's the strength of the desexualized mind. It doesn't perform power. It is power. But the real battle, it's not out there. It's in your own head. It's the voice that tells you, don't bother. It's not worth it. Just go back. That voice isn't yours. It's the system talking. It's the sum of years of conditioning disguised as your thoughts. You silence that voice, not by arguing with it, but by taking action, by proving it wrong, over and over. And one day, you'll look back and not even recognize the man you used to be. Because that version of you was scripted. The one standing here now, he's awake. And once you're awake, there's no going back. You'll see everything. The manipulation, the emotional traps, the fake trophies. And you'll keep walking. Not because you think you're better, but because you've chosen a path almost no one dares to walk. Control. So next time you're tempted to prove something to someone, look in the mirror and ask, who's in charge here? If the answer isn't you, the work's not done. But if you can look yourself in the eyes and say, I decide, then you've crossed the line. You've shattered the script, and there's no more pretending. That, right there, is power. That is the beginning of real freedom. Now, let's push further, because if the desexualized mind is the weapon, then we have to ask the real question. Who are you fighting? Most people think the battle is with the world, society, social media, shallow culture, and yes, that's part of it. But the real war, it's inside. You're not fighting others. You're fighting your own emotional conditioning, that deep internal script that makes you act before you even think, that ties your worth to how many people look at you, message you, praise you. That's the enemy. It started early. You were taught that love has to be earned, that being wanted equals being valuable, that attention equals identity. And what did that create? A man split in two, one chasing desire, the other pretending it's love. But it goes even deeper, that craving for attention, that panic when your phone stays silent, that empty feeling when no one's watching. That's not passion. That's not even loneliness. That's addiction. Addiction to reflection. And a man addicted to being reflected in others can never truly see himself. A desexualized mind breaks that addiction. It cuts the cord. It stops begging for signs of worth. It learns to be alone and whole. Because, let's be honest, what scares you isn't being alone. It's what rises up in the silence. In that quiet, your real self shows up, the one you've been trying to drown with distractions. And that's where the work begins. That's where you stop flinching, stop avoiding, and start seeing. In that space, everything becomes clear. You stop reacting and start watching. You begin to notice how people move, how they signal, how they manipulate, because now you're centered. You've stopped being a pawn on the emotional board. You've become the one moving the pieces, because the desexualized mind isn't numb. It's sharp, it's focused, it's strategic. And now, we get to the root of it all, the validation instinct. The part of you that says, I need to be seen to feel alive. But let's break that. That's not strength. That's fear in disguise. That's dependence wearing confidence like a mask. And a man who depends on desire to feel valuable is leaking power every second. So ask yourself, not how do I impress, but why do I feel the need to? If your fuel is emptiness, everything you build will collapse. Every win will feel fake. Every connection will be shaky. You can't afford that. Not if you want to be free. And that leads us to something most men never even hear about: emotional autonomy. This is when you stop depending on outside forces to feel whole. You stop needing replies to feel secure. You stop riding the high and crash of other people's attention. You stop living like a puppet and start living like a creator. Emotional autonomy means you can walk away without drama. You can say no without guilt. You can be alone without falling apart. And when you reach that level, people notice. They feel something different about you. They can't name it, but they sense it. Because you're no longer buyable, no longer manipulatable, no longer weak. But don't get it twisted. This isn't isolation. This isn't becoming cold. This is choosing your connections from wholeness, not hunger. A man who is full doesn't connect out of fear. He connects out of power, out of truth. That's love without chains. That's commitment without desperation. Now let's talk about where to put all that energy. Because once you stop wasting it on chasing, you've got more power than you realize. Desire, when mastered, becomes focus, purpose, depth. The world distracts you with noise, but the man who masters focus moves in silence. He sees clearly. He builds precisely. That's the superpower now, sustained attention. While everyone else is scrolling, reacting, chasing, you're building. You're noticing things others miss. You're moving with purpose. Because the man who desexualizes his mind doesn't stop feeling. He starts feeling everything more. He filters out the static, and what's left is clarity, intuition, precision. He doesn't speak to be liked. He speaks to make impact. He doesn't act to impress. He acts to lead. That is the real revolution. A mind no longer owned by instinct, but guided by intention. A mind that doesn't need to beg or prove. A mind that simply is. That's why men like this are rare. That's why they can't be controlled. They don't follow trends. They don't fit molds. They're anomalies. And that's what you are meant to be. Not a follower, but a disruptor. Not someone who fits the game, but someone who rewrites the rules. This journey doesn't end here. It starts here. Now the real challenge begins. Not understanding, but living it. And yes, there will be losses. You'll shed people, habits, entire environments. That's the price of power. But what you gain? Clarity, peace, identity. The ability to wake up without pretending. The strength to need nothing and build everything.